Do you ever feel like you are not appreciated enough by others? Do you struggle to get the respect and recognition you deserve? Do you want to be more valued in your personal and professional life? If you answered yes to any of these questions, then this video is for you. In this video, I will share with you 9 strategies to be more valued, based on the ancient wisdom of Stoicism. In a world that often measures our worth by external markers, wealth, status, or societal validation, Stoicism emerges as a beacon of timeless wisdom, urging us to find our true value within. The Stoics, ancient philosophers who navigated the complexities of life with grace, believed that the highest good lay not in material success, but in the cultivation of virtue. Imagine Stoicism as a philosophical compass, pointing you towards an internal landscape where virtue reigns supreme. Stoicism, founded on the principles of wisdom, courage, justice, and temperance, teaches that by cultivating these virtues, you unlock a wellspring of inherent value. It's not about the applause of others. It's about the quiet confidence that comes from living in alignment with your best self. As we dive into these 9 strategies, think of them as keys that unlock doors to a richer, more meaningful existence. Whether you're a seasoned Stoic or just beginning to explore this profound philosophy, these strategies offer tangible ways to integrate Stoic principles into your daily life, enhancing not only your personal sense of value, but also the value you bring to the lives of those around you. Today's journey isn't about grand gestures or radical transformations. It's about the subtle shifts, the incremental changes that over time mold you into the best version of yourself. So as we embark on this exploration, open your mind and heart to the wisdom of the Stoics, for within their teachings lie the secrets to a life of enduring value. By following these 9 strategies, you will not only become a better person, but also a more valued one. You will be able to create more value for yourself and others, and enjoy more respect and admiration. So, if you are ready to learn how to be more valued, then stay tuned and watch this video till the end. And don't forget to subscribe to this channel for more videos on Stoicism and personal growth. Number 1. Cultivate inner virtue. In the tapestry of Stoicism, the first thread we unravel is the profound call to cultivate inner virtue. Virtue, in the Stoic context, is not a lofty ideal reserved for the saints, but a practical guide for living a life of purpose and value. It comprises wisdom, courage, justice, and temperance, the pillars upon which the Stoics built their ethical framework. Wisdom, as the first pillar, is the cornerstone. It's not just about accumulating knowledge, but applying it sagaciously in the ebb and flow of life. Stoic wisdom involves understanding the world, our place in it, and discerning what we can and cannot control. It's the light that guides us through the labyrinth of choices, helping us navigate towards a virtuous life. The second pillar, courage, isn't confined to battlefield heroics. In the Stoic realm, courage is the mettle to face life's adversities with equanimity. It's about confronting challenges, acknowledging fears, and acting in accordance with one's principles despite the tumult. Courage, in the Stoic sense, is the grit that transforms obstacles into opportunities for growth. Justice, the third pillar, extends beyond legal frameworks. Stoic justice implores us to treat others with fairness, empathy, and kindness. It's a call to recognize the inherent worth of every individual, fostering a sense of community and interconnectedness. In practicing justice, we contribute to the collective betterment of humanity. Finally, temperance, the fourth pillar, advocates for balance and moderation. It's the harmonious integration of desires and actions, steering clear of excesses or deficiencies. Temperance in Stoicism is the compass that keeps us on the path of virtue, ensuring that neither indulgence nor austerity sways us from our ethical course. How do we, in the hustle of our daily lives, weave these virtues into the fabric of our being? Begin with introspection. Take moments to reflect on the decisions you make and the values that underpin them. Wisdom blossoms from this reflective practice, gradually becoming an inherent part of your decision-making process. Cultivate courage by facing your fears, big and small. Embrace discomfort as an opportunity for growth. In the Stoic garden, courage is a resilient flower that blooms even in the harshest of conditions. Justice is a daily practice. Engage with others empathetically. Strive to understand diverse perspectives, recognizing the shared humanity that unites us all. In these small acts of justice, the tapestry of virtue is woven. Temperance, perhaps the subtlest virtue, thrives in the discipline of moderation. Practice mindfulness in your actions, ensuring that neither excess or deficiency governs your choices. As you embark on the journey of cultivating inner virtue, remember that it's not a destination but a continuous process. In nurturing these virtues, you carve a path towards a life rich in purpose and value. Number 2. Embrace adversity. In the Stoic arena of life, the gladiators of virtue are not exempt from the battles of adversity. The second guiding principle we draw from Stoicism is the art of embracing adversity, understanding it not as an enemy, but as a companion on the path to personal growth. Stoicism teaches us that life, by its nature, is fraught with challenges. The Stoic response is not to resist or resent these challenges, but to accept them with open arms. This acceptance is not a passive surrender, but an acknowledgement that adversity is an inevitable part of the human experience. Imagine adversity as the sculptor's chisel shaping the raw marble of your character. In the midst of difficulties, you have the opportunity to chisel away the excess, revealing the refined and resilient masterpiece within. It's not about avoiding the blows, but dancing with them, using each stumble as a stepping stone toward personal evolution. The Stoics, from Epictetus to Marcus Aurelius, faced their fair share of tribulations. Epictetus, a former slave turned philosopher, found freedom not in the absence of adversity, but in his response to it. Marcus Aurelius, a Roman emperor, navigated the complexities of ruling an empire with a calm and stoic fortitude that echoes through the ages. To embrace adversity, start by reframing your perspective. See challenges not as obstacles blocking your path, but as opportunities for inner transformation. The Stoic mindset invites you to view hardships as tests of your character, moments where your virtues can shine brightest. In the face of adversity, the Stoic response is not to be indifferent, but to be resilient. It's about maintaining an inner tranquility, a calm amidst the storm. Picture a ship navigating turbulent waters. It doesn't control the waves, but it adjusts its sails to weather the storm. Similarly, you can't always control external circumstances, but you have the power to control your responses. One practical Stoic exercise is the premeditation of adversity. Take moments to contemplate potential challenges, preparing your mind to respond with virtue rather than react with panic. This mental rehearsal fortifies your inner citadel, making you more adept at facing life's unexpected storms. As you walk the Stoic path of embracing adversity, remember that each trial is an opportunity for growth. In the crucible of challenges, you forge a character that not only withstands the tests of time, but emerges stronger with each passing tempest. How do you currently navigate life's adversities? Are they stumbling blocks or stepping stones? Share a personal experience in the comments below where embracing adversity led to significant personal growth. Number 3. Master your reactions. In the grand theatre of life, where the unexpected takes center stage, the Stoic sage is not distinguished by the absence of disruptions, but by the mastery of reactions. This strategy unfolds the Stoic art of mastering your reactions, a skill that transforms life's chaotic scenes into opportunities for inner composure and growth. The Stoics believed in the profound influence of our perceptions and responses to external events. It's not the events themselves that determine our well-being, but our interpretations and reactions to them. Thus, the Stoic path invites us to become architects of our own emotional landscapes. To master your reactions, start by cultivating self-awareness. In the heat of the moment, take a step back and observe your emotional responses. The Stoics call this momentary pause prosocia, a mindful awareness that allows you to choose your response rather than being swept away by impulsive reactions. Consider the familiar scenario of traffic congestion. The Stoic driver doesn't succumb to road rage, but recognizes the situation as an external event beyond their control. Instead of reacting with frustration, they choose patience and maintain inner tranquility, understanding that their emotional state is within their jurisdiction. Epictetus, one of the revered Stoic philosophers, emphasized the power of our interpretations. He asserted, "It is not events that disturb people, it is their judgments concerning them." This echoes the Stoic notion that our reactions are within our control, offering a gateway to a more serene and meaningful existence. Another Stoic strategy is the practice of negative visualization. Imagine briefly losing something dear to you, a loved one, a possession, or a cherished aspect of your life. This exercise isn't meant to induce distress, but to foster gratitude and resilience. By envisioning temporary losses, you prepare your mind to appreciate the present moment and adapt to life's inevitable changes. Remember, mastering your reactions is not a Stoic suppression of emotions, but a mindful channeling of them. It's the ability to respond to life's provocations with reason and virtue. As you navigate the sea of experiences, you become the captain of your emotional ship, steering through waves of adversity with unwavering calm. Mastering your reactions is a profound step toward a more intentional and virtuous existence. Number 4. Foster empathy. As we continue our journey into the heart of Stoicism, the fourth strategy invites you to explore a virtue often underestimated but central to the Stoic ethos: empathy. Far from being a mere sentiment, empathy in Stoicism is a profound acknowledgement of our shared humanity and an essential ingredient in the alchemy of virtuous living. Stoicism encourages us to extend our understanding beyond the boundaries of our individual experiences. Empathy in this context is not about adopting another's emotions wholesale, but about recognizing and respecting the common threads of joy, sorrow, and the human experience that bind us all. To foster empathy, begin by practicing active listening. In a world often dominated by the cacophony of opinions, the Stoic listener seeks not to counter or impose, but to genuinely understand. This empathetic listening creates a space for connection, fostering an environment where every voice is acknowledged and valued. The Stoic philosopher Seneca, in his letters, emphasized the importance of understanding others. He wrote, "We should give as we would receive, cheerfully, quickly, and without hesitation, for there is no grace in a benefit that sticks to the fingers." In cultivating empathy, the Stoic recognizes the interconnectedness of all lives and the reciprocal nature of compassion. Extend your empathetic gaze beyond familiar circles. The Stoic practice of widening the circles of concern involves expanding your empathy to encompass not only friends and family, but also strangers and even adversaries. This widening perspective aligns with Stoic cosmopolitanism, the idea that we are all citizens of the world, interconnected in the grand tapestry of existence. Moreover, Stoicism encourages us to view others with a kind and understanding eye, recognizing that everyone is fighting battles unseen. In the Stoic theater of life, empathy is the bridge that spans the gaps between individuals, fostering a sense of community and shared understanding. Practical exercises can further hone your empathetic skills. Try journaling from the perspective of someone else, stepping into their shoes to understand their joys, struggles, and aspirations. This imaginative exercise not only cultivates empathy, but also reinforces the Stoic notion of seeing the world through a broader lens. In fostering empathy, remember that it's not a one-time act, but a continuous practice. Like tending to a garden, nurturing empathy requires diligence and care. As you navigate the terrain of human relationships, let empathy be the compass guiding your interactions, enriching your connections with a deeper, more genuine understanding. Number 5. Live in accordance with nature. In the profound corridors of Stoic philosophy, this strategy beckons us to align our lives with the grand symphony of nature. Living in accordance with nature is not a call to retreat into the wilderness, but an invitation to harmonize our actions with the fundamental rhythms that govern the cosmos. The Stoics believed in a universal order, an intricate dance where each entity, from the smallest atom to the celestial bodies, plays its part. To live in accordance with nature is to attune our lives to this cosmic melody, embracing the inherent wisdom embedded in the natural order. Consider the seasons, a cyclic procession of birth, growth, decay, and renewal. The Stoic, observing this perennial rhythm, draws lessons on the transient nature of life. Just as winter yields to spring, the Stoic recognizes that life's challenges are fleeting, making room for personal growth and renewal. Living in accordance with nature also entails recognizing the dichotomy of control. Epictetus, the Stoic sage, illuminated this principle, urging us to distinguish between what is within our control and what lies beyond. Nature, with its immutable laws, represents the latter. By relinquishing futile attempts to control external events, the Stoic finds serenity in accepting the natural flow of life. This principle extends to our desires and aversions. The Stoic, attuned to the rhythms of nature, aligns their aspirations with what is virtuous and in harmony with the cosmic order. Like a leaf carried by a gentle breeze, they navigate the currents of life with grace and acceptance. Living in accordance with nature is not a call to passivity, but an empowerment to act virtuously. The Stoic engages in life's unfolding drama with a conscious understanding of their role in the cosmic tapestry. With each decision, they contribute to the universal order, becoming a harmonious note in the symphony of existence. Practical application involves mindfulness of your surroundings. Take moments to connect with nature, whether it's a stroll in the park or a gaze at the starlit sky. In these contemplative pauses, recognize the interconnectedness between your life and the broader cosmos. Embrace the cosmic dance, and in doing so, discover a profound sense of purpose and tranquility within the vast expanse of existence. Number 6. Practice gratitude. In the mosaic of Stoic virtues, the sixth strategy unveils a gem that transcends time, the practice of gratitude. Stoicism, with its profound simplicity, teaches us that cultivating gratitude is not merely a courteous gesture, but a transformative tool that can enrich every facet of our lives. Gratitude, in the Stoic paradigm, is not confined to moments of abundance or triumph. It is a daily practice, a lens through which we view the world. It involves acknowledging the beauty and goodness present in every circumstance, whether seemingly favorable or challenging. Begin by appreciating the simple pleasures. The Stoics found profound joy in life's basic elements. A warm ray of sunlight, a nourishing meal, or the company of a friend. By consciously recognizing and expressing gratitude for these small blessings, you shift your focus from what you lack to what you have. Marcus Aurelius, the Stoic emperor, wrote, "Very little is needed to make a happy life. It is all within yourself, in your way of thinking." This echoes the Stoic ethos that genuine happiness emanates not from external acquisitions, but from an internal disposition of gratitude. In the face of adversity, gratitude becomes a potent elixir. Rather than lamenting what is absent, the Stoic embraces challenges as opportunities for growth. Seneca in his letters wrote, "A gem cannot be polished without friction, nor a man perfected without trials." Gratitude, even for life's tribulations, transforms obstacles into stepping stones on the path of personal development. A practical Stoic exercise is the evening reflection. Before retiring, take a moment to ponder the events of the day. Instead of dwelling on perceived shortcomings or setbacks, focus on moments of gratitude. What experiences, encounters, or lessons are you thankful for? This reflective practice instills a positive perspective that lingers into the tapestry of your dreams. Moreover, the Stoic practice of negative visualization aligns with gratitude. By momentarily contemplating the potential absence of the blessings you hold dear, you deepen your appreciation for them. It's not about dwelling on loss, but about savoring the present with heightened awareness. As you cultivate gratitude, witness the subtle but profound shifts in your perception, guiding you toward a life steeped in contentment and resilience. And on that note, what are you grateful for today? Share in the comments and spread some positive energy. Number 7. Be mindful of time. In the Stoic sanctuary of wisdom, strategy number 7 beckons us to a contemplation on the most precious currency of existence, time. The Stoic perception of time transcends mere minutes and hours. It is a profound reflection on the transience of life and the art of savoring each moment with mindful awareness. The Stoics, with their keen understanding of the fleeting nature of time, invite us to view our lives through the lens of impermanence. Time, they assert, is the only resource we cannot replenish. Hence, to live in accordance with Stoic principles is to be acutely mindful of how we invest our most invaluable asset. Consider the Stoic metaphor of life as a banquet. Each passing moment is a morsel on the banquet table, an offering that will never be served again. The Stoic, in their mindfulness, appreciates the flavors of the present without undue attachment or regret for the courses already consumed. Seneca, in his timeless letters, emphasized the importance of valuing time over possessions. He wrote, "It is not that we have a short space of time, but that we waste much of it." This echoes the Stoic call to examine our daily pursuits critically. Are we investing our time in endeavors that align with our values and contribute to our flourishing? Being mindful of time also involves a conscious recognition of mortality. The Stoics, far from fostering a morbid preoccupation with death, saw the contemplation of mortality as a catalyst for a more purposeful and meaningful existence. By acknowledging the finite nature of our journey, we infuse our actions with a sense of urgency and intentionality. Practical Stoic exercises for time mindfulness include the premeditation of evils, a reflective practice where you contemplate the limited time you have and how you want to utilize it. This exercise is not meant to induce anxiety, but to instill a sense of purpose and clarity in your daily endeavors. As you delve into the Stoic reflections on time, may it awaken a profound awareness within, guiding you to live not as if you have endless tomorrows, but as if each breath is a testament to the preciousness of now. Number 8. Seek wisdom continuously. As we traverse the Stoic landscape, the 8th strategy opens the door to an ever-expanding realm, the perpetual pursuit of wisdom. In Stoicism, wisdom is not a static destination, but a dynamic journey, a continuous exploration that enriches every facet of our lives. The Stoic sage, though virtuous, does not claim omniscience. Instead, they embrace a humble recognition that wisdom is an infinite ocean, and they are but sailors navigating its depths. This perspective invites us to view life as a perpetual classroom, each experience a lesson, and each encounter an opportunity to deepen our understanding. To seek wisdom continuously is to foster a curious spirit. Seneca, the Stoic philosopher, encouraged intellectual curiosity, asserting that a well-stocked mind is resilient in the face of life's challenges. In the Stoic garden, curiosity is the water that nourishes the seeds of wisdom, ensuring they flourish and bear fruit throughout your journey. Begin by cultivating a love for learning. The Stoics revered knowledge not for its own sake, but as a tool for virtuous living. Whether through literature, philosophy, or the wisdom of those around you, the Stoic seeks to absorb insights that contribute to their ethical framework. Epictetus, known for his practical Stoic teachings, emphasized the importance of continuous learning. He asserted, "It is impossible for a man to learn what he thinks he already knows." This echoes the Stoic sentiment that true wisdom arises from a receptive mind, open to new perspectives and always ready to refine its understanding. Practical application of seeking wisdom involves the daily habit of reflection. Take moments to ponder your experiences, both pleasant and challenging. What lessons can be gleaned? How can you apply these insights to enhance your understanding of virtue and your role in the broader scheme of existence? Furthermore, embrace the diversity of wisdom sources. Wisdom is not confined to ancient texts or renowned philosophers. It emanates from the tapestry of human experiences. Engage in meaningful conversations, listen to the stories of others, and glean insights from the collective wisdom of humanity. The Stoic sage, in their continuous quest for wisdom, recognizes the interconnectedness between knowledge and virtue. Wisdom for the Stoic is not an intellectual exercise divorced from ethical considerations, but a practical guide for living a life of purpose and integrity. May the pursuit of wisdom be not a burdensome task, but a joyous adventure, an odyssey where each new dawn brings the promise of deeper understanding and a more profound connection with the vast expanse of human wisdom. Number 9. Lead with integrity. In the concluding chapter of our Stoic exploration, the last guiding strategy unravels the cloak of leadership adorned with the virtue of integrity. Stoicism, far from being a solitary journey, emphasizes the profound impact of leading with virtue on the interconnected fabric of society. For the Stoics, leadership extends beyond positions of authority. It is a way of being in the world. Leading with integrity involves aligning your actions with your values, making ethical choices, and inspiring others through the silent eloquence of virtuous living. Epictetus, the Stoic teacher, asserted, "We cannot choose our external circumstances, but we can always choose how we respond to them." In the realm of leadership, this principle becomes a guiding beacon. External circumstances may be beyond your control, but your response, rooted in integrity, defines your leadership. Integrity, in the Stoic context, is the harmonious integration of one's thoughts, words, and actions. It's the authenticity that emanates when your inner compass aligns with the principles of virtue. A leader with integrity is a steady anchor in the tumultuous sea of challenges, a beacon that others instinctively follow. To lead with integrity, begin by examining your values. What principles guide your decisions and actions? The Stoics propose a conscious alignment with virtues such as wisdom, courage, justice, and temperance. By anchoring your leadership in these timeless virtues, you create a foundation that withstands the tests of time. Moreover, practice self-awareness. Understand your strengths and weaknesses, acknowledge mistakes, and learn from them. The Stoic leader doesn't pretend infallibility, but embraces imperfections with humility, using each experience as a stepping stone toward personal growth. The Stoic emperor Marcus Aurelius, in his Meditations, reflected on the transient nature of leadership. He wrote, "Very little is needed to make a happy life. It is all within yourself, in your way of thinking." A leader grounded in Stoic principles recognizes that the source of genuine leadership is not external accolades, but an internal commitment to virtue. In your leadership journey, prioritize the well-being of those you lead. The Stoic leader fosters an environment of justice, empathy, and collaboration. By treating others with dignity and fairness, you contribute to the creation of a community where each member is valued and respected. Let the call to lead with integrity resonate within you. May it inspire you to be a leader whose influence extends beyond the immediate and ripples through the annals of time, leaving an indelible mark on the collective story of humanity. To wrap up this last strategy, share an example of a leader who embodies integrity in your eyes. Let's celebrate virtuous leadership in the comments. Our Stoic journey is not a destination, but a continuous evolution, an invitation to navigate life's labyrinth with wisdom, resilience, and an unwavering commitment to virtue. As you carry the torch of Stoic insights forward, remember that the journey itself is the destination, a journey toward a life more valued, more virtuous, and more deeply connected to the universal rhythm of existence. We invite you to be an active participant in this dialogue of wisdom. Share your thoughts, reflections, and experiences in the comments below. Your insights enrich not only your understanding, but the collective wisdom of our community. If you found value in our exploration, don't hesitate to hit the like button. Share this video with friends and family who might embark on this Stoic odyssey with you. Subscribe to our channel for more profound insights, timeless wisdom, and practical strategies to infuse Stoicism into your daily life. The path to a more valued, virtuous existence is paved with continuous learning. Dive deeper into Stoicism by exploring more content by watching the recommended videos shown on your screen, or by selecting one from the increasing collection on our channel. Your journey is a mosaic of moments, and each video is a brushstroke that colors your canvas of understanding. Let's continue to walk this path together,